What's going on, wrestling community? Today it is Monday, August 23rd, 2021, and you are currently tuned into the Five Starr Wrestling Report podcast. If you are checking out this show for the first time, welcome and thanks for stopping in. We have 2 weekly uploads on this channel each week. We got the Friday edition where we cover NXT and AEW Dynamite, and Monday's edition where we cover AEW Rampage, and going forward covering NWA Power and any weekend wrestling shows or events that happen to come up. So that show's sort of a grab bag depending on the week, but the 2 consistent topics that will show up on the Monday show are Rampage and Power. As you could tell by today's video, that is not the case, but if that's something that you seem interested in, if that's something that you would like to check out each week, make sure you subscribe, click the little bell icon to stay notified of when those videos get posted, and most importantly, make sure you do me a favor in the algorithms here on YouTube and comment and rate this video. But most importantly, comments are important. You can share your thoughts on the shows, you can share whatever's on your mind, I really don't care. Just leave a comment down below for me. Would greatly appreciate it. Got a lot to cover on this one, so I won't waste too much time. The other thing I want to plug is, in addition, you can find me on Rumble, which I'll be sure to leave a link down below so you can check the content out there. And I had mentioned this in the previous Monday edition, or I'm sorry, the previous Friday edition, that I had something that was in the works right now that I didn't want to go into full detail until I got things worked out. And we're still working through some things right now, but I am in the early stages of doing some work with the Chairshot as part of the analysis opinion crew, and potentially going forward, this podcast could be used on that platform and be distributed to the public as well. As of now, I have 4 articles each week that will be posted. The days for those would be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. They will mostly be opinion pieces, but they will cover various topics from WWE, NXT, AEW, whatever's on the market worth discussing. And if you want to check any of those out, I will be sure to leave the most recent article upload in the comment with a link for your easy access. And that'll be one of my little side hustle projects going forward. But I'm looking forward to the opportunity. It's a chance to grow my status here in the wrestling community. It's something I've always kind of wanted to do. And like I said, if this podcast has the potential to show up on there as well and be distributed, that'll give me a chance to grow this platform here as well and get more voices over to this channel and get more attention. So all around good news. With all the prelim plugs out of the way, though, let's get into the bulk of the report here. We're going to kick things off, and I got the 3 coverages that we got today, obviously, as you can tell by the title. We got AEW Rampage from this previous Friday, August 20th. We have SummerSlam from Saturday night, August 21st, and NXT TakeOver 36 from Sunday night, which was August 22nd. So let's get into this bad boy here. We will begin with Rampage. Well, unfortunately, it turns out that the 4-man commentary booth was not a 1-week deal. I know it's hard to gauge right now because we're only 2 shows in, but I'm still finding it really hard to justify a 4-man commentary team in the long term. However, considering what happened moments into the show, it was probably a good idea to have JR out there at least. But I still think they need to go with a 2-man team. I don't like Excalibur. I think he's obnoxious. His commentary style just doesn't jive with me. But I can at least defend him as a play-by-play dude if I bite my tongue long enough. If you need a color commentator out there, I'm either going with Taz or I'm going with Tony. Mark Henry is really ineffective in this role, and after last week, they need to keep Jericho as far away from a headset as humanly possible. So it's something they still need to work on. Anyway, so CM Punk showed up. Kind of unexpected. It was a moment. That is for sure. I still think he missed a golden opportunity to deliver one of those mic drop one-liners by immediately sitting cross-legged in the ring and going, "Do I have your attention now?" That would have been cool. Man, where do you even begin here? Well, Punk pretty much summed it right up from the jump. There's a lot to say and really not enough time on the show to cover it all. And especially with all the other material on the show I need to cover, I need to make it an effort not to prolong this coverage, for an hour alone, although I probably could if I wanted to. The one thing I'll say right off the bat is, in terms of crowd reaction, I don't think you're going to see another reaction like this for a long time. This was by far the single biggest moment in professional wrestling in 2021, and I don't even think it's close. Maybe if you wanted to make an argument, you could say wrestling returning to live crowds was bigger, but I still would say this is more impactful. Because the other thing you have to keep in mind, too, is the pandemic era of pro wrestling lasted a little over a year with closed venue shows. Punk's been out of a wrestling ring for 7 years. I mean, this was pretty much on par with The Rock's return to WWE in 2011. And if we all remember, that was crazy simply because no one in the world saw that return coming. I mean, he had basically been gone for the amount of time that Punk was gone. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think the gap period for both men being gone were stretched across a decade. Because Rock left in 2004, came back in 2011. Punk left in 2014 and came back in 2021. So it's kind of odd. But just listening to Punk here and watching his execution, the way he carried himself, the attitude, I mean, you could just see the fire there. This was not the same CM Punk that I saw in WWE 7 years ago. And I'll be frank here. One of my sort of guilty pleasures that I like to go to is listening to episode 226 of that Art of Wrestling podcast with Colt Cabana. I still remember it like the back of my hand. I've watched that episode from start to finish probably a dozen or so times since it aired. And I do that because, in a lot of ways, that episode was a real eye-opener for a lot of people as to just how ruthless and toxic things are behind the scenes in WWE. But the other thing is, while on the one hand, we got a little bit of closure later that year as to where Punk stood with regard to WWE and the wrestling business in general, there was still a lot of animosity and resentment, but moreover, a lot of healing that needed to be done. I don't think Punk was in a good headspace, even back then, to truly explain just how annoyed he was. The 2014 Royal Rumble is still so strange going back and watching in hindsight. Because at the time, if you remember, the bulk of the talk coming out of that show was not about CM Punk. The talk was all about Daniel Bryan and him not even being booked in the Rumble. Punk was pretty much an anomaly in that match. It wasn't until the next day when we heard the rumblings about Punk walking out before Raw where, he pretty much broke the internet. But man, I rewatched that Royal Rumble match years later, and it's surreal. You watch Punk come out with that gray hoodie, and you could just tell he was in a horrible state. His demeanor, his physique, his facials, his work in the match. I probably knew at the time that he was a wreck, but it really wasn't until that Art of Wrestling podcast episode came out where the reality check just kicked in. He just looked totally defeated. But you compare that with Punk in 2021, he looks healthy, he looks happy, he's rocking that salt and pepper deal, looks great. He seems to have been able to heal both physically and spiritually, from the demons that he's been battling over the last 7 years. And, whether or not that animosity with WWE still exists or not, It's hard to judge without hearing it from the horse's mouth, but at this point, I don't really even know if it matters. What I do know is that everything we heard from Punk here just sounded completely and totally genuine. While I've never been the biggest CM Punk fan, even going back to his Ring of Honor days, I have always appreciated Punk as a talent because deep down, I knew how much he loved wrestling, and I know how badly WWE had killed his passion for it. And I also know that if Punk was ever going to get back into the business, he was going to need time to reflect and really figure himself out. I get it, man. I've been there. I'm still there in plenty of ways. I spent my entire life as a musician, listening to music, writing music, studying music, being a drummer, a vocalist, singing in choirs, working with people that shared the same passions as me, the same goals as me. 26 years of that. Started taking private lessons in second grade, did every ensemble at my disposal, auditioned for every orchestra I could, learned from some of the world's top musicians in school, just soaking in everything I could around me. And then somewhere along the way, you go to school thinking that this is what you want to do for the rest of your life. You start butting heads with people. You see colleagues that don't really share the same drive as you. You get emotionally drained. You start getting sucked into doing things that you don't really want to do. You feel like you've kind of hit your peak. People start going into business for themselves, and you realize they don't have your best interests at heart. I get it. I understand what it's like to lose passion for something you once loved so dearly, especially when it's taken away from you by unforeseen circumstances. So, like I said, there's a lot I could continue to elaborate on here, but, I do want to keep this rolling. I will conclude with the Punk thing by saying it is great to see him back. I'm glad he was able to revive his passion for this business. I'm glad that he was able to rectify some of those more recent questionable life decisions and career decisions, mainly his MMA run. And, the whole deal with him setting up a program with Darby Allin for All Out, it was well done. I said in my Dynamite review that they really need to start kicking things into another gear with the All Out build, because that show still lacks a lot of buzz right now. But right here, Punk announcing that he's going to wrestle Darby on the show immediately flipped a switch, and now I'm hooked. And I'm not even a Darby Allin fan, so good shit here, bro. Good shit. Unfortunately, following that fantastic opening segment, I had to watch the rest of the program, and nothing else is going to follow it. We had Christian Cage doing a hype promo for the Jurassic Express backstage, because apparently Jungle Boy doesn't like doing promos. So we get the match. It's Jurassic Express versus Private Party in the Tag Team Eliminator semifinals. So, well, right off the bat, I gotta say this. Story time! I had to go back and watch this again. I had so much on my mind about the Punk thing. I was completely absorbed in my notes and missed like 90% of this match. So I ended up watching it twice. As it turns out, I didn't miss anything all that special. Just a lot of moves. Private Party, I'm still ambivalent about. I also still have no idea which guy's Quinn and which one's Cassidy. The one with the stupid fucking hair and white pants, I'm not all that keen on. The other one's fine. I still think these guys are too much of a carbon copy of the Street Profits, and I've always felt that way. The Canadian Destroyer, where Jungle Boy's partner assisted in allowing his opponent to hit the move from the top rope, I will not even dignify that garbage with a response. All I'll say is if someone in management signed off on that, they need to be immediately fired. If I were running a wrestling company and I saw something like that, those guys would be suspended without pay, no questions. Maybe even released. Anyway, Jurassic Express won, as I think most people expected, so they will be facing either the Lucha Bros or the Varsity Blondes next week. Still have to presume that Jurassic Express are going over in the tournament to get a rematch with the Buckfucks, but Yeah, I can also see them giving the nod to Phoenix and Pentagon because I know that feud still has some unresolved tension. Jade Cargill versus Kiera Hogan sucked. At least it was short. We had a split screen interview deal to hype up Moxley and Garcia in the main event. It was actually a really good promo. Garcia didn't leave much of an impact, but the Ever Rise Dorks were pretty entertaining. They got that over the top cartoony element to their deliveries, and it is goofy, but whereas when the Bucks do it, it just comes across as lame. The Ever Rise dudes are a joke anyway, so I can at least defend that it fits their gimmick. And in the main event, Jon Moxley versus Daniel Garcia. I know I kind of crapped on his promo deal just a minute ago, but I really dig this Garcia dude. He's, how do I put it? He's got a lot of Roderick Strong vibes. Pretty generic look, grotesquely thin, and not a whole lot of personality. Never going to be a world champion or anything. But he's got ring presence. He's in shape. Everything he does is smooth. Everything he does has purpose. He's intense. He's got a lot of upside as a talent. Match was pretty short. Garcia worked over his leg for a while, but he ended up tapping out Garcia. And then they did the Afterbirth deal with 2.0 trying to jump the faces. Kingston, Darby, and Sting ran out for the save, which did put the babyfaces at a 4-on-3 advantage momentarily, but if I recall correctly, I think Kingston ended up getting laid out like a dweeb immediately, so, it did at least turn into a fair fight. And it was also smart not bringing out Punk here for that exact reason, so good call on their part. Overall, it's hard not to grade this show on a pretty steep curve. It's a one-segment show, and truth be told, that's not their fault. CM Punk's return was always going to overshadow anything else they did here, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because, the Punk return was great, and it did set up a huge match for All Out. It also did what will probably amount to the biggest number they'll draw on Rampage going forward. So, if you were thinking about watching the replay of this show, I'm sure most people have seen it by now. If for anything, go back and watch the CM Punk promo, but maybe after like the first 30 minutes of the show, there's really not a whole lot going on. Unless you like no-sell spot fest, then watch the Jurassic Express private party match. So we moved to the following evening where we had WWE SummerSlam. Well, one thing I will say right off the bat, WWE sucks at a lot of things. An example that immediately comes to mind is pay-per-view length. 4 fucking hours. Just no human being I know could possibly function watching 4 straight hours of pro wrestling these days, especially not WWE. I mean, I got a full-time job, man. This is a huge ask of me. I mean, ain't no way the 51,000 plus fans at that show could function for 4 hours. To be fair, that is entirely speculation. Perhaps someone could survey and see if at least maybe a handful of fans could keep their attention for the entire length of the show. However, one thing I will say WWE does not suck at: pay-per-view sets. They always seem to get that right. So good on them. The aesthetic of the show just was great. Matt Riddle and Randy Orton versus Omos and AJ Styles for the Raw Tag Titles. So, Randy's rocking the porn stash these days, huh? Well, hey, if you can't change your personality up, you can always change your look up. At least that's the way I see it. By the way, shout out to the dude with the sign that read, "Randy, let's wrestle naked." We did not see this sign much longer after the show, so I wonder if it was confiscated. Anyway, I enjoyed this. I thought it was a real fun opening tag match. Obviously, I don't watch Raw every week, so I have not been following the developments of this RK Bro deal. Although I have heard from various sources that it's probably the only thing worth watching on that godforsaken program right now. But it was good. Almost didn't really do a whole lot, so obviously they're trying not to expose him right now. which does beg the question of why he's wrestling here on a Big Four show instead of, training at the Performance Center if he's clearly not ready. Perhaps his size may have something to do with it. But Orton and Riddle won, crowd pop big for the pin, so I got no problems here. Eva Marie versus Alexa Bliss. Good match. I thought this was, best match in Alexa's career by far. Eva really brought out all the stops here. Both girls showcased why they're clearly the best women wrestlers in the business today. And, I can't wait to see what they do with them going forward. Maybe title contention. Because I think they deserve it after this performance. Obviously, I'm being facetious here, people. Of course, this was shit. What else do you want me to say about it? Everything about it sucked. Alexa sucked. Eva sucked. That stupid play doll sucks. The video package beforehand sucked. I don't even know how to elaborate any further. Like I said, I don't watch Raw. But fuck, I watched 1 minute of that video. I thought, how do people put up with build for weeks of this? Good Lord. And what the hell have they done with Piper Niven? Or whatever she's called now. Dewdrop? Jesus. Yeah, 5 minutes of my life that I'll never get back there. So let's just move on from that fiasco. Damien Priest versus Sheamus for the United States Championship. Good to hear Priest's theme again. That tune still slaps. I had no complaints with this one. It was a fun big guy match. Both guys worked hard. They did a lot of impressive stuff. Priest did take an unbelievably stupid flip dive to the outside where all of his weight crashed right on his lower back and hip. I think I remember he used to do that move in NXT, but he would at least get a little more leverage off the ropes before doing the flip. Here he got like no spring and he just landed right on his hip and ass. Looked brutal. And you could tell he was hurt too. Like, he was trying to cover it, not to expose it, but yeah, he was a hurting unit. And, the last several minutes were really good here, I thought. Sheamus had Priest in a heel hook, but Priest ripped off Sheamus' face shield. He got him with a spinning kick, and then he hit him with the Reckoning for the 3. Like I said, fun match. Yeah, definitely made up for the horror show that I experienced 10 minutes prior. I like Priest a lot. It's a shame that they couldn't do more with him in NXT, but he is someone that you could definitely build up as a world title contender at some point. I know he's not the youngest guy on the market these days, but I could definitely see them giving this guy a major push going into next year. If he was 8 years younger, maybe a little more agile, I would make an argument that he'd be a probable Royal Rumble winner, possibly a main eventer for a WrestleMania, but I don't know. It's different. He's almost 40 years old, so we all know Vince is not really looking for those kinds of talents these days. But, I really hope they don't drop the ball with him because he's got a lot going for him as a talent. Rey and Dominic Mysterio versus the Usos for the SmackDown Tag Championships. And of course, only in WWE does a guy that got busted for his 3rd consecutive DUI in the last 2 years come out to this match carrying one of their championship belts. And in fact, retaining. Although I guess I could consider this good news. It only took him about 10 years, but the Usos have finally changed up their look enough for me to be able to distinguish which one is which. Jimmy now has the long hair and Jay has the short hair. It's not much, but it makes all the difference in the world. But believe it or not, I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. Dominic's a good sympathetic underdog babyface. He's still fairly green in there, but, if they're not going to have him work in developmental, having him work with his dad is probably the best option for him right now, doing some tag matches, get his stuff in, but, not really try to push him for too long. As far as matches go, it was pretty paint by numbers, pretty dry. Dominic sold and sold forever. Ray got a hot tag and ran wild for a bit. Usos cut him off. Dominic tried to make a big heroic save at the end, but he got cut off, and Jay ended up pinning Ray with the top rope splash for the 3. So, fine match, but, I wasn't blown away or anything. So, I heard that they pretty much cut Elias's legs out from under him, and now we know why. They have replaced him with the obnoxious Joey Ryan-looking scrub, Rick Boogs. And he played out Shinsuke Nakamura to, well, apparently just a dance. And that was all. I figured he was coming out to wrestle a match, maybe defend his Intercontinental title, but nope, apparently not. And that was that. By the way, when did he beat Apollo Crews for the belt? I presume he beat Crews, right? Because I made that NXT rankings video a few weeks ago, and I vaguely recall talking about Crews being the IC champ in that video. I don't know. Again, 4-hour show. I'm a very impatient person. I didn't need to see this. So then we get the weirdest and probably the most bewildering thing on the show. Bianca Belair was supposed to defend her SmackDown Women's title against Sasha Banks, but after a real long video package and Bianca's entrance, it is announced that Sasha is unable to compete. So, well, first Carmella comes out as the initial replacement, and they stand around the ring for a minute or two. Bianca said that she was going to get her hands on Sasha eventually, and that she was going to take her frustrations out on Carmella. So they stand there some more. You pretty much knew that this match was not going to happen, so most people presume something was up. Because God only knows after that Eva-Alexa catastrophe that they would dare bore us to death with a fucking Carmella match on pay-per-view. The temerity of these people. And yeah, as it turns out, this match did not happen. We get the return of Becky Lynch. She comes down to the ring. She beats Carmella's ass. Tells Bianca that they're going to tear the house down. Everyone's going crazy. This is like a huge moment. And they ring the bell. Becky fakes Bianca out with a handshake. Gives her a forearm to the jaw. Hits her with the manhandle slam. Pins her to win the title, and just like that, they completely thwarted all of Bianca's momentum in about a 30-second time span. So, obviously I've got like 67 questions about this. The first of which is, how is this official? Especially considering that even in the video package, they showed a segment of Sasha and Bianca signing the contract on TV for the match. Like, how is this match official? So that's my first question. Second question, what the hell happened to Sasha exactly? I don't know. They never told us. Was she killed? Did Becky jump her backstage? Did she legitimately have travel issues? Is she hurt? Did she decide she didn't want to do a job? So there's another handful. A lot of confusion here. Ultimately, though, the single biggest question really boils down to this. Why the false advertisement? I mean, like, even if you want to say, well, they wanted to make Becky's return a surprise. Okay, I get that, but then that begs a follow-up question. Why did you need to spend 3 minutes prior wasting our time with that stupid video promo? Like, if you knew Sasha wasn't going to be there, just scrap the video. Have Bianca do her entrance, announce that Sasha can't compete, and then you can proceed doing exactly what you ended up doing. But don't waste my time with a 3-minute video on this already too damn long 4-hour pay-per-view with a pointless video package. Just dumb. So, yeah, I still don't really know how to feel about it. I mean, on the one hand, it's great to see Becky back. But on the other hand, they made Bianca a sacrificial lamb for her. And this is all after they built her up for an entire year and gave her that great WrestleMania moment. I mean, it really did seem like they were behind her full-fledged. So that sucks. I mean, clearly they got a big rematch planned down the road, but this just, like I said, it was very bizarre. I wouldn't say I hated it, but I am a big fan of Bianca. And I am on record saying that I think Hunter severely missed the boat with her in NXT before she got called up. So when WWE made her champion earlier this year and they went all in on her, I had gained the impression that they saw her as a big megastar. But the treatment she got here just was beyond baffling to me. I mean, it was the jobber treatment is what it is. So there's a lot of mixed opinion about this still, too, on the internet. And I haven't really read or listened to too many other people's reports, but from the information I'm seeming to gather by the headline articles, people really seem to be upset about this, genuinely. And that's not good because I think Becky Lynch is supposed to be a babyface, right? And that's the impression I got here when she came out. So, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see how people respond to this on SmackDown. Because we all know what happened when they tried this a few years ago. It didn't end well. Well, that's a lie. It ended up well for Becky because she became the top babyface in the company. But WWE wanted her to be the heel in that scenario, and fans weren't buying it. So if this turns out to be like the polar opposite scenario where they had Becky come back to win the title so that she could be a babyface only for the people to boo her and essentially turn her heel, it's going to be really strange going forward. So, there you go. Jinder Mahal versus Drew McIntyre. Yes, Jinder Mahal. They're still trying to make this dude happen. It's like 2017 all over again. And of course, he's still fucking gassed at the guilds. Anyway, is it true that these two are feuding over a fucking sword? That's that's what your former WWE champion has been subjected to post-title reign? Creative genius. Match was boring. At least it was relatively short, but this is a bottom-of-the-hour Raw match that did not belong on pay-per-view. The highlight of this did come at the very end, though, when Drew goes to decapitate Jinder's crew with his sword. He just goes, "Remember the Chairshot, Shanky. Remember the Chair-Shots." No idea why, but that made me laugh. Nikki Cross, Rhea Ripley, and Charlotte Flair in a three-way for the Raw Women's title. And yes, I know her name is Nikki Ash. Shut up. My God, Charlotte. Hun. Lay off the Botox. I have really grown to hate multi-person matches in wrestling anymore, especially triple threats and fatal four-ways. Every single one of them is booked exactly the same with absolutely no originality at all. Yeah, this just didn't work. I like Nikki Cross as a worker, but this superhero gimmick is just death television. You know, Rhea's awesome too, but she felt like a complete afterthought in this match. Charlotte, decent worker, but she's been overexposed for years now. I'm so sick of her. There were some okay moments here, I guess, but there were also a couple scary spots here too. Charlotte did that corkscrew to the outside at one point, and Nikki slammed her head right into the barricade. No idea how she didn't concuss herself. And I've seen Rhea do that stupid flip bump over the top rope dozens of times. She's going to destroy her knees doing that one day. Kurt Angle used to do that back in the day too, and I always cringed every time he did it, especially when he did it in TNA. God almighty. Like I said, the match wasn't bad. You know, they definitely found their footing toward the end, but like I said, multi-person matches have been done to death, especially in WWE. I've pretty much seen them all at this point. Sometimes they pull out good three-ways. The Universal title match at this year's WrestleMania comes to mind, but this just wasn't one of them. Kind of felt like one of those matches where they wanted to try and get them on the card, so they just threw them all together in a match, and yeah, it just didn't really settle well. And I don't know much about the Nikki Ash deal. Based on what I've read, fans don't seem to be all that into it, and that was clear based on this show alone. And apparently this gimmick was Nikki's idea. I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe a good idea in theory, but in execution, this gimmick just ain't doing it. And, yeah, of course Charlotte fucking won. Why wouldn't she? It was at this point that I checked my timestamp, only to realize that we were only halfway through this fucking show. I apologize for the outburst. That was rather unprofessional of me. Seth Rollins versus Edge. Oh, man. Edge breaking out the Brood gimmick for this one. We did need a cameo entrance from Gangrel to really seal the deal here. This was a very good match. Hell of a match, in fact. But, man, I was so fatigued by this point in the show. Couple cups of coffee, some head smashes off the table, and, well, at least kept my eyelids open. All seriousness, though, I really did dig this match by the end. Definitely one of my favorite Seth Rollins matches I've seen in a while. They got a lot of good false finishes here, good story elements with Seth trying to work over Edge's neck throughout. I liked that they played into that continuity too by going back to the, what was that, a Raw angle in 2014 where Seth had Edge pinned down on his briefcase and, threatened to break his neck. So that was really good. Edge just working his butt off here from start to finish. He has been absolutely great in just about everything he's done this year. And he tore the house down at every big match he's been involved with. Props to this guy for really dedicating himself to this comeback story. He's in great shape. He's working smart. He's killing it with the promos. Just phenomenal stuff. And I definitely think the right decision was made to have Edge go over. And I don't think a lot of people would dispute that. He's been on a really bad track record this year. What with him losing his title match in Mania and then losing to Roman last month at Money in the Bank. So he definitely needed the win. What they exactly do with him now, I don't really know. I could see them doing a rematch next month at Extreme Rules. Hopefully not to just 50-50 and give Seth his win back, but it is WWE, so that is a wait-and-see deal. We had horrible comedy with Miz Morrison and Xavier Woods about water and wetness and moisture and dripping and whatnot. At least Miz looks sharp in his blue suit. That's about all I can say. Bobby Lashley versus Goldberg for the WWE title. God, I cannot believe Lashley is 45 years old. He looks no different than he did when I saw this dude debut in 2005. Man does not age. Goldberg, on the other hand, well...
You've aged.
Oh boy, this match. What can you say about this match? Well, the crowd didn't dig Goldberg. Not a big shock there. I'll say this. Undertaker versus Goldberg, this was not. But it sure as fuck was not Goldberg-Lesnar at Mania 33 either. I think I've said this before. How in the world you don't do Lashley versus Lesnar, I still have no idea. Especially with what happened later on. But for some reason, they felt that they needed to trot out Grandpa Goldberg for a title match here. And gotta think they're regretting it now. I mean, like I said, it wasn't train wreck horrible. It wasn't good. Here's the main problem. Goldberg has always been good for one kind of match. It's the 60-second squash where he wrecks dudes in short order, spear, jackhammer, 1, 2, 3. It always gets over because it's short, sweet, and effective. Keyword there being short. Goldberg is not a 7 or 8 minute match guy, or however long this was. He is a guy that needs to get in there, do his stuff, and leave. Just, it's not a good idea to have him wrestle long wrestling matches, especially not in the year 2021. And this is coming from someone growing up loving Goldberg. That wasn't until they beat him and started exposing him in long matches. I mean, Lashley tried here, but he's not a miracle worker either. He knows that this whole match is a pins and needles deal from start to finish. And with Goldberg being so fragile at his age, Lashley really couldn't do anything with him. He couldn't throw him around like a rag doll. He couldn't work a fast-paced MMA style, and so he was basically left to do some stomps, some holds, and basically work over his knee for a while. So Lashley ends up winning by ref stoppage, and he went for a post-match attack on his knee with a chair. That is when we had Gageberg try to run in, but Lashley pretty much beat his ass. And unfortunately, based on what they did here, it looks like they would like to revisit this feud down the road. Please don't. It's like all I can ask for as a fan. Just please don't. And John Cena versus Roman Reigns in the main event for the Universal Championship. All right. First thing out of the gates I have to say, major shout out to the assholes passing the hard cam with the giant pink Kenny King sign. That by far was the hardest laugh I had all weekend. So, well, they really had me thinking there for a hot minute that Big Match John was actually going to weasel out with his 17th title win here. And then Roman threatened to walk out if he couldn't beat John at SummerSlam, and right there they pretty much killed any and all suspense. Cena is rocking the bald spot in the back. Way to go, dude. I'm sure I'll get there one day. We had pretty much every Cena trope in the book. He did all the big moves, all the nonsensical no-sells, the horrible fake-looking punches, blatantly calling spots without even trying to hide it. He did take that powerbomb spot that put him out with the herniated disc in his neck, so it was very surprising to see him take that bump, especially at his age. Anyway, the match was really basic. Roman beat him from pillar to post. Cena would get the occasional flurry of offense, but Reigns pretty much destroyed him from start to finish. And, well, at the end, Cena hit the AA off the top rope. Roman kicked out. Cena teased going for the spear by taunting Reigns' setup, but Reigns cut him off, hit him with the spear, and got the 3. And afterwards, Cena just vanished entirely. Never saw him again. And Reigns is in the ring celebrating for about a minute, and that is when Brock Lesnar came out, looking ripped as fuck. This guy's been hitting the heavy loads in the gym during his time off. He also grew his hair out, so now he's got that stupid man bun deal where he shaves the sides but lets the middle part grow, and I have no idea when this hairstyle became popularized. It was around maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I was in college that I started to see this, and I didn't get it then, still don't get it now. Of course, I have long hair, but I chose to be a real man about it and grow the full length, like Adam Cole style, and instead of pussyfooting it here. Now, obviously, I would never say that to Brock in person for fear of my livelihood, but suffice it to say, I'm not a fan of the man bun. So he gets in the ring to stare down Roman. Paul Heyman's practically shitting his pants, and Roman basically backs down to close out the show, so they do not come to blows. And they were sure to draw attention to the fact that Heyman was Lesnar's advocate prior to his departure, so now there's a real conflict of interest going on there. So it is fascinating to see how they explain that whole deal. Now, that in itself is worth checking out the program. Granted, am I excited for yet another chapter of the never-ending Reigns-Lesnar saga in WWE? Not particularly. I mean, this feud's reached Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens vibes at this point. They need to be probably about as far away from each other as humanly possible. But I will at least say that the dynamics are a little different here, so at least he has the potential to tell a better story than their other series of matches. But we will see. So there you have it with SummerSlam. Reviewing main roster WWE pay-per-views are still really difficult for me to judge as overall enjoyment goes. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of the shows are really long, and you usually get a mixed bag of really great stuff and really dumb stuff. And that's pretty much what SummerSlam was. There was some good, there was some bad. I've definitely seen worse SummerSlams in my 20-plus year journey as a wrestling fan. Am I going to remember things about this show a year from now? Maybe. I'll probably remember Becky and Brock's return off the top of my head, but if you're going to try to ask me to run down the card or recount any spots of any of the matches, yeah, that probably ain't going to happen. And that brings us to NXT TakeOver 36. Cameron Grimes versus LA Knight for the $1 million title in the opener. I think I talked about this in a couple of my NXT reports, but this has probably been one of my favorite feuds in NXT this year. It's a real old school feud, but Knight and Grimes have been great in it. Ted's been great. The skits have been mostly great. The reincarnation of the $1 million title is awesome. Yeah, this is definitely a breath of fresh air. And these guys have actually proven to have some really good chemistry with each other. The matches have been real solid. I especially love their ladder match they had a couple months back. But it's been fun. There's some hokiness to it, but the matches, they keep things serious for the most part. They play their roles well, and it ends up being a lot of fun. This is just something that I wish people in AEW would understand. It's not that you can't do comedy in pro wrestling, and it's not that you can't implement it during matches. But when you're doing it constantly and things just look over the top and goofy and fake, and you see that playing out during the actual progression of the matches, that's when it just hits me no, I don't want anything to do with that. You can have your comedy feuds, but the Orange Cassidy things, stuff like that, just, it doesn't belong on television. So I do appreciate that Grimes and Knight have actually had some really straight wrestling matches, and even though the concept of the program is weird and goofy, they're at least going out there and they're wrestling regular matches. So thank you for that. We did have the baffling spot here where Ted Irish whips Grimes into Knight for a drop kick off the steps, and the ref does not call for the DQ despite blatantly seeing it. And Wade Barrett also drew attention to this on commentary, to which Vic Joseph's response is, well, he didn't touch LA Knight, therefore it is okay. Huh. So basically what he is saying is, if Ted were to hypothetically pull out a pistol and shoot Grimes in the arm, that is not a DQ, because I guess his allegiance is with Grimes. But if he shot LA Knight in the arm, that would be a DQ. Interesting theory, sir. Interesting theory. Overall, though, I like the match. Ted ended up getting involved at the end, put Knight in the $1 million dream submission on the outside, rolled Knight back in, and then Grimes hit the cave-in to win the title. So, that was that. I have to presume that this is the blow-off, so where they go with either guy from here, I really don't know. Well, actually, no, that's a lie. I think we know where Cameron Grimes is going. Sorry, I had to put that drop in there. Moving along here, Dakota Kai versus Raquel Gonzalez for the women's title. This was... well, actually, it ended up being pretty good by the end. Nothing they did early on was bad or anything. it was just a lot of moves and not a lot of heat. So the first part of the match is a real grind to get through. It did pick up by the end once they started implementing more of the false finishes. And I think the finish was pretty cool too. Dakota goes to the pump kick while Raquel's perched on the top rope, but she grabs Kai, hoists her up for that Chiquita bomb, and gets a 3. I know Dakota's been working some dark matches on the main roster recently, so I don't know if they're planning to call her up now, but she is going up soon. Her doing the job here wasn't all that surprising. And then after the bell, Kaylee Ray showed up, and well, they pretty much immediately cut away. So I guess that's their next title program. Cool. Here we go. Ilya Dragunov versus Walter for the United Kingdom Championship. The most anticipated rematch in the last 10 months, I think. The funny thing is, I honestly don't think I'm going to say anything about this that won't ultimately be covered by anyone that already saw the match. It was as great as I think we all figured it would be. Walter is... I don't know, I'm trying to think of the best accurate description I could come up with for his ring style. I know I used the term old school early on, but that's really fitting here as well. It's old school, and it works. Because when you watch a Walter match, in not just WWE, but wherever, it feels different. And honestly, it is on par with like watching a Brock Lesnar match. Because when he steps into a ring, you know that he's going to wrestle something completely different from what everyone else does. He really does have that ring presence. He wrestles differently, he paces things differently, everything he does has purpose and meaning. You don't see a lot of that from guys in the business today, and it's a real shame. And the funny thing is, his offense isn't anything all that remarkable if you think about it. It's a bunch of chops, some amateur-style takedowns and holds, a couple power moves, but goddamn, son, everything he does has intensity. And, that's not to discredit Dragunov either. I've said this in the NXT recap shows, but, because I don't follow NXT UK, I've only seen a handful of Ilya Dragunov matches in WWE. Maybe discounting his match with Pete Dunne on NXT with that baffling finish decision, everything I've seen from him has been great to outstanding. But I don't know, just think about how insane that sounds in 2021. You want to talk about how everyone in the business now does too much when they get in the ring. Everyone's so focused on can you top this deal of, what kind of impressive flip or dive can I do that'll generate a pop? People pop for a goddamn sleeper hold in this match. That is how effective Dragunov and Walter were at getting people into this thing. So these two deserve massive props for their performance based on that alone. But, I thought this easily was best match of the night. Easily one of the best matches I've seen all year. Both guys worked their asses off. Walter chopped this poor guy from start to finish. Dragunov welted up like a balloon, fucking blood blisters from one end of his chest to the other. I think the only thing that would have completed the look is if his stitches had popped open from the match he had with Roddy this past week. And going back to the sleeper deal for a minute, it was basically what they built the entire match around. Dragunov kept trying to lock in the hold, but Walter would keep finding ways to counter it or escape it. And it all led to Dragunov going back to the well one more time, giving Walter some of those brutal stiff shots to the head and neck. And he locked in the sleeper one more time. He essentially yanked the guy up by his neck, and then Walter just immediately tapped out. And it was great, too, because, you see after Dragunov gets Walter to tap, he just stands there and sells it like he has no idea how to react. I'm genuinely sure he was shocked. Like, that's how it came across to me. But, the reality eventually sets in. He just kept persevering. He didn't let off from the hold. And when Walter finally knew that he wasn't able to beat this guy and that he had no fight left in him, he tapped. So I thought this was just about perfect. Best match I've seen all year, hands down, and I don't think anyone else will come close. Some people may try to make the argument that Walter should have done like a pass out hold instead of tapping. I see that argument, although here's the reason that I think him tapping is actually okay. I don't presume that he's going to do a rematch. The rumors that I've been hearing is that Walter has been trying to find ways to basically oust himself from NXT UK altogether in order to work the regular NXT program. Now, I don't know if that's going to come to fruition based on all the changes that are coming, but that is what I last heard, is that Walter pretty much was going to run out his stint in NXT UK, and once he dropped the belt, he was basically going to be done from there. So, by all intents and purposes, if he's not going to keep wrestling on that show, him tapping out here is perfectly fine. It's basically like a passing of the torch deal before he steps down. So that is like the only reason that I would say him submitting here clean is a good thing. If he's not going to get a rematch for the belt and they pretty much wrapped up that whole UK deal with him, then this is a perfect way to go out. So I was okay with this finish. Kyle O'Reilly versus Adam Cole, 2 out of 3 falls. So, man, I had a lot of mixed thoughts here, and unfortunately, I didn't really lay them out in my notes particularly well, but I'm going to try to be as fair as I possibly can here. This is a shoot from the hip deal, because, like I said, my notes are really scattered on this. I didn't compile a great list of bullet points. I've seen so many Cole O'Reilly matches, and unfortunately, the best matches I've seen these two have were like 5 or 6 years ago in different wrestling companies. The 3 TakeOver matches they've had this year have been good, but not great. The one thing I liked about this match in comparison to the other two is that at least this match went a reasonable length. It was 2 out of 3 falls, so you kind of knew going in that the match was going to go for at least 20 minutes at the very least. Whereas in their previous bouts, it felt like they were needlessly dragging out the length, and it ended up hurting their matches rather than helping. The problem here is that because I have seen so many Cole O'Reilly matches, at some point, I really would have expected them to try to break out something different, something we had never seen before. As it turns out, they had extensions of their previous encounters, and it just left a lot to be desired. The first fall was over in like 3 minutes with Kyle getting the upset pin. That was pretty underwhelming. The street fight was every fake garbage wrestling match in the book, and I've definitely seen better. They made no effort at all to play up the Brainbuster story either, which they easily could have done. They did the deal with Cole cutting off O'Reilly on the top rope and him landing on his ribs, so they played up the injury story. But, this whole rivalry is stemmed from the deal of Cole killing O'Reilly with a Brainbuster on the steps months back. So, why are these guys working a rib injury exactly? I don't know. And the finish of the second fall was just plain stupid. Like, I've seen guys take that spine-first bump on the backseat of 2 upright chairs, and I never approved of this move. Gimmick chair or not gimmicked. Just, it's way too risky. Guys should not be landing on their back like on a surface like that. It's just, ugh. I don't need to see that. And I'll go over the cage match part in a minute here, but I'll tell you one thing. These fans did not like Cole tapping out to Kyle to go over here. Those audible bullshit chants did not go unnoticed. So, I don't know if that's a direct reflection of how they feel about O'Reilly getting a singles push, or if most of them are pretty savvy to the Cole situation at this point. They realize after this match that this is Cole's last match in NXT, so they were not really happy with the way it went down. I didn't hate the finish. Actually, I thought it was kind of clever. I guess maybe it would have been more effective if they had built up more drama with the handcuff spot before Kyle locked in the heel hook, but that's just me. The other thing, too, is that the cage match didn't even go that long. I think it only went, 5 minutes, right? So they got to the finish, and it just felt really rushed. As for Adam Cole, guess we'll see. As of now, no new reports have come out regarding a contract status or anything, so I presume he hasn't put anything pen to paper that we know of. And if that's the case, Cole's days in WWE may be numbered. So we will find out soon enough. But yeah, just I don't know. It sucks because if you really think about it, like this probably was the ideal feud for Adam Cole to go out on. 13-year wrestling journey with his best friend from the Undisputed Era, 2 former tag partners and friends, gone bitter enemies, yada, yada, yada. It's a good story, but like I said, the feud's been done before. It's probably been done better from other organizations, so yeah, it sucks. But we'll just move along here. Samoa Joe versus Karrion Kross in the main event for the NXT title. Well, I'll say this about Kross. Whatever mystique this guy had at one point, it is gone. Removing Scarlett from the picture, the 2-minute TV job to Jeff Hardy on Raw, the 50-50 booking they've been doing with him on the main roster, it's really killed this guy's cred. I know the crowd's been kind of lukewarm with him for a while now. Kross has been a weird entity in NXT. And I don't think the fans ever really knew exactly how to react to him. Sometimes they cheer him, sometimes they boo him. It's just been really odd. But I can tell you this. There was no disputing that Karrion Kross was the heel in this match. And you knew that as soon as he came out without Scarlett. Kross has had a lot of criticism in the last year, especially when it comes to delivery in the big matches. I get it. I mean, I wouldn't argue people if they say Kross really hasn't blown the roof off as NXT champion. It's not like he's been a bad champion. He's just been, ineffective. Maybe that's the best way to phrase it. He's a solid worker, good promo. He's definitely got a presence to him. But as far as the overall package deal goes, he's just not quite there. He definitely suffered from the big fish in a small pond deal when he was working for Impact a few years ago. And maybe that was the problem. They were scouting talent. They saw Kross doing some great work in outside promotions. They saw that he was clearly one of the better guys they had in Impact and maybe figured that would translate to NXT. I don't really know. The booking in NXT for him hasn't been the problem. It's just the crossover stuff they've been doing with him on the main roster that's killed his steam. Especially because everyone reads the internet now. And with all the reports about Kross doing 50-50 jobs on Raw and main event, how do you expect people to get behind a guy like that? Doesn't matter if his NXT work has been great for the most part. People see right through that shit, man. And like I mentioned about Kross not delivering in title matches, this is kind of another case of that. His match with Joe here was fine. It was a passable TV main event, but it wasn't like a high-quality pay-per-view main event or anything. Joe looked pretty good early on, but you could definitely tell he got blown up by the end. There's a part where he had Kross in that coquina clutch, and you could just see the pain and exhaustion on this man's face as he's struggling to apply this hold. And considering the match went 12 minutes, it's, let's just say I do not see Joe's title reign lasting very long, or his in-ring return. Regardless, I think it was the right call to have Joe win the belt. I know they've been teasing Joe and Pete Dunne for a while, so that would probably be their first title program. Where they go after that, I'm not sure. But with this whole new NXT era deal they've been promoting, I'm sure they'll probably spend about a year building up someone like an Odyssey Jones to eventually go after the belt. I could see them doing something down the road where, if Joe ends up dropping the NXT title, maybe to a Walter or something, You have Walter as a long-term transitional champ to eventually drop the belt to Jones or, one of their new up-and-comers that they build up. Of course, that's all speculation, but that would seem like the most logical way to go. And, the other thing, too, is that it would give them a chance to kind of make the breakout tournament mean something. Because the problem was when they did it 2 years ago, they had ACH win it, and then he immediately challenged Cole for the belt and lost, and then that was pretty much it for the guy. So, I don't know, they can maybe do a thing where if they do this tournament every year, they kind of treat it like a Royal Rumble deal, where maybe the winner of the tournament gets a future title shot down the road at one of the big takeovers. You can actually really build up the tournament each year as something special and, just maybe do, you could still do single elimination, but, you just kind of put all the top younger guys in there that you've been building up for time. And then the 8 best talents that you got on the roster are all fending for a title shot. So, there's all kinds of ways you could go, but that would maybe seem like the most productive direction. But again, I'm not a booker. Overall, I enjoyed the show. The Walter Dragunov match was the best match of the year, no doubt. The opener was a lot of fun. The women's match was solid. Even though I didn't care for the 2 out of 3 falls match, they still did good stuff in there. Cole O'Reilly are not going to have a bad takeover match. It's just all the backstory stuff that goes into it that just left a lot to be desired. And the main event had the right finish, so even though the match itself wasn't spectacular, the decision was the right one. It will be interesting to see where they go with this show in the future. Like I said, I have no plans of dropping NXT from the weekly reports. If the show ends up feeling like a waste of time as time progresses, I'll probably slowly phase it out and replace it with something else to talk about during the Friday recaps. But, for now, we're going to stick with Dynamite and NXT. Let me know your thoughts on the shows. Everything that's on your mind. Share it down in the comments section. Plenty of stuff to talk about. Favorite moments, favorite show, favorite match. I want to hear it all. Whatever's on your mind, let me know in the comments. Remember, too, to subscribe and rate this video. You can find me on Rumble if you want to watch this content over there. And my hopes are to be able to get this podcast on the Chairshot site in the coming weeks. So for anyone familiar with that site, come read my articles and check that out as well. I will make sure I leave a link for those articles in the comments section going forward. Thanks again for the support, and I will be back on Friday for the NXT and AEW Dynamite Weekly Recap. Peace out.